Hello everybody, we're back in the shop today and we're talking about some fuel lines, brake lines, flaring stainless steel braking fuel lines and making fuel lines and stuff. And what you're looking at is some of my benders here. We go all the way from 3/16, we got a 1/4 inch, 5/16, 3/8. There's a big 1/2 inch bender. You see a lot of these out there. This one will bend, I think 3/8. Oh, there it is, 3/8, 5/16, and 1/4 inch. I don't really like those. If you're going to do any kind of bending or anything at all, I like a single size bender. I think these are made by Imperial. These are real nice benders. Yeah, Imperial Eastman makes these. They're real nice benders. Do a nice job on steel or stainless steel or some of those new lines they're coming out with. This 3/16 one is a rigid, but they all do the same thing, and they're much nicer than those universal ones. And I didn't really realize there was so much of a problem with buying lines. And if you've been following along on my videos, you remember my customer bought a set of stainless steel fuel lines, and there's really one line from the tank to the pump and then one from the pump to the carburetor. And if you remember what we got, they were huge. They didn't even remotely fit the vehicle, and the stainless steel lines, even on the brake lines, they all came with steel fittings. And I didn't really realize, because I always make all my own lines, I didn't really realize there was a problem out there. But there is. And a lot of guys, it seems, are having trouble flaring the stainless steel. And they tell me it's not worth it. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. And we're going to talk about a few different line materials that you can use. And I'm going to try and shed some light on this. So let me bring over a few different kinds of materials, and we'll start playing around with them. Okay, here's a few different materials. You just could go over to, we've got a lot of Napa stores around here, and they're all over the country. We've got some of those big chain stores, the Auto Zones or Auto Palaces, or I don't know what the hell they're called, but I don't generally like those places, but they do have some parts. This is your standard, which you're going to find just about anywhere. This is just a steel coated line. There's like a zinc coating on there. It's got a CAD fitting on it, and it bends easy, it flares easy. It's not bad. That's a 3/8 line. And the next thing I found over at one of those places, I think it was Napa, was this kind of like a green coated line, and these hold up pretty good, but they do rust after a while, and they come with your standard steel CAD fitting, and they bend real easy. You can bend these with your hand without too much trouble. And then one of the stores, I forgot what it was, they had what they called like a copper nickel type of blend here. It's very soft. It bends extremely easy. And I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it's slightly magnetic. It's not 100% nickel or something like that. It will hold up for a long time, and I've used this on vehicles, and a lot of guys like it because it's easy to bend. A lot of do-it-yourself guys kind of like that. I put it on a snowplow truck one time, and that was out in the salt and the snow, and they rust away. Not as fast as a steel line, but they do rust away because they are, like I said, slightly magnetic, so they will rust. The next option, which I use on all my restorations, is 304 stainless steel, and this will never rust. But the key with this is to use stainless fittings, which when you call up some of these big companies that make tubes, pre-bent tubes, they come with a steel fitting. And that's always where it rusts real bad, where it screws into the wheel cylinder, where it screws into the master cylinder. That's where you don't want to have any trouble. And for some reason, they can't get it through their heads to put a stainless fitting on there. And then if you ask them to put a stainless fitting on there, you know, they want to charge almost, you know, I think it was $5 or $7 a fitting. That's just nonsense is what that is. And I've talked to you know, the two big companies there, and I've sent them patterns numerous times and told them about the 2As and the 3As and the 3Bs and the 5s and even this, you know, the 7s, all the way up to the CJ7s. And I've sent them patterns. I've carefully taken lines off, and they insist on sending that wrong brake line. Remember, if you were following along on the videos, they send that short brake line that's good for a 2A but not a 3A or a 3B. And I made that one yesterday out of stainless with stainless fittings, and that's going to work fine. Now here's the, you can't really get an overall shot of this, but here's the fuel line. There's a good pattern that came off that CJ3A project we're doing. And I've got a piece of stainless on the bench, and I've got the stainless fittings. And we're going to flare that, and we're going to bend it. And it might be kind of basic to some guys about double flaring tubes, but I've seen a lot of guys that just single flare it. And I've also seen guys, you know, roll through with their vehicle, and they said they had a brake line blowout, and they had copper lines on there. You can't use copper on a brake system. You could get rolls of copper at a hardware store, and a lot of guys are using that, and it's going to blow out eventually. So do not use copper for brake lines. They just can't hold up to the pressure, and eventually they're going to split, and you're going to blow out, and with a single master cylinder you're going to lose all your fluid out there. So even though this one looks like copper, there's a high content of nickel in there, which makes it strong. It's still easy to bend, and it looks copper, but it's not. That copper you get for refrigeration and water lines and stuff like that is just not acceptable on a vehicle. And same thing with a single flare. It's just not acceptable to have a single flare. You need a double flare on the brake system. So I'm going to take you through the flaring process, and I'm going to do one on this big 3/8 line because I think you'll see it better. And then I'll give you some tips on flaring stainless steel. I've seen a lot of guys, even, you know, guys that have been restoring cars for a while, they just shy away from stainless steel because they say it's a pain to flare. Well, if you have the right tools and you go about it and you're patient about it, they come out nice. So hang in there with me, and we'll put a double flare on a piece of tube here, and I'll show you how to properly make a double flare for your brake system. Okay, here's the kit I have for flaring, and this is probably, oh, I don't know, 25 years old now. It's a Snap-on kit. Well, it's made by Blue Point. That's part of Snap-on, and the Blue Point stuff they don't warranty as nice as the Snap-on stuff. But if you bug your Snap-on guy, I've been through a couple yokes. The threads got all mangled up and stuff, and I broke one of these little wing nuts one time. But overall, it's been a real good kit, and the quality of your flare is going to be directly proportional to the quality of your flaring kit. If you get a junky $5 kit out of Harbor Freight or something, some kind of no-name Chinese brand, things are going to break, things aren't going to go good. Stainless steel is going to be a bear. It just won't work. You have to invest in good tubing benders and flaring tools if you think you're going to do stainless steel. It'll pay for itself on the first job if you buy quality stuff, and you'll have it for the rest of your life. They really work good. So we're gonna jump into that 3/8 line now and go step by step. I know this seems kind of basic, And a lot of guys, you know, might think it's just nonsense, and they know how to do it already. But the funny thing is, I find more people to screw up their flares and their brake lines and really don't understand what's happening than not, you know. So this is for the guys who are just getting started, who are interested in making their own brake lines. Might be their first time. You know, we got to do the advanced stuff and the basic stuff. And I'm not trying to forget anybody out there. I know there's guys just getting into vehicles. It might be younger generation just getting started. And trying to bring out some videos for everybody. So I will get set up to start the flare, and we'll go through it step by step. Okay, I just made a square cut with that with the tubing cutter. And I've got this little reamer here. This is usually attached. This is usually attached to the tubing cutter, but I don't like it attached. And you just go in there and you ream that burr out of there that you got when you cut it. And then usually guys will go from their cut right to flaring. And on plain steel and soft stuff, you can kind of get away with that. But the best thing you can do on soft or hard stuff is take a fine file, and put a little chamfer on that edge there. Just a little bit. Just kind of break the edge, put a little chamfer on there, and just go around. Make it even. You know, make it as even as you possibly can make it. And just keep going around until you got a nice little edge there. It's hard to see in the camera, but we just got a little bevel on there. And that's all you need. It's especially important on stainless steel. That's a 3/8 line, so we'll get our 3/8 little piece out of there. Now your line is going to stick up the thickness of this guy right here. So you lay this on there, and you make your line stick up. I'm trying to do everything and stay in the camera here. You make your line stick up the thickness of that. Yeah, I hope you can see that. Okay, that's the right height. And then you take these guys, and you're going to tighten those down. On the end of your yoke, this is an extra one from that last yoke I had, you take that rod in there and you tighten these up. So what I like to do is tighten the one closest to the tube first, and then the back one. You need that tight in there because you're going to put a tremendous amount of force on there making your double flare. So you want that tight. Okay, I've just got a little foot vise there. Quick clamps this into the jaws here. You know, you just step on that, and it's just handy. You know, these are meant to be used even under the car. You grab onto the edge, but I like to just hold it in the foot vise and put some pressure on it, so I got my hands free, and that works out real nice. I'll try and get you a close-up shot of the first operation here. Okay, first thing we're going to do is take our little bending plug here, and we're going to put it in. This is a 3/8 one, and this goes right in there. And that's your first operation. We're going to put the yoke on there. We're going to squeeze that down flat. So let me get the yoke hooked up, and we'll proceed to make that. Okay, we got the yoke centered up on there. It's pressing down on that little puck there. And we're just going to turn the crank here. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll that into place. I'll show you when I take it off what's going to happen. This is the first operation to making a double flare. Okay, you're going to screw that down until it's tight right on the flaring tool. Okay, let me take this apart and I'll show you what we did. Okay, there's our first operation. You see the tube in there, and we flattened it and we've kind of rolled it to the inside there. I think you can see that okay. Right there. I think you can see what we did there. That's that first operation. That's the first step to a double flare. Okay, now we're going to take our yoke, put it right in the tube, and we're going to proceed to fold over that material right to the inside of the tube. And it's going to put the correct flare on there. And this is the part you don't want to put a real gorilla grip on there. You just want to tighten it. And you'll know by experience, you know, you could take it apart like this and look at it. You don't want to go too much where you start splitting the tube or anything. And there's a good double flare. I'll take it out of the tool there and show you what it looks like. Okay, now there's our double flare. It might be kind of hard to see, but the tube is doubled up on the inside there. That's what makes it strong. That's why they call it a double flare. And here is the nut, and you can see it fits squarely all around there. And that's the only type of joint that you should have on your brake system. Don't just omit the first step and put an angle on there and then scrunch it down tight. It's not strong enough, and eventually it's going to leak on you. Brake systems need a double flare, and that's how you properly do a double flare. Okay, I'm going to try and show you right there on the instructions. There's your first bend. You can see you're kind of rolling the material over and spreading it out. And there's the second part where you're flaring out to the right bevel, and it's doubled up. So very critical with the double flare. And like I said, I didn't realize there was so much confusion or guys not getting it right, but I know this is kind of basic information for a lot of guys, but for the new guys trying it for the first time, it's critical to get a double flare in there. Okay, that was a piece of soft steel, and very easy to do. But now we're going to do some stainless steel, and everything is more critical on stainless steel. We're going to put a little bit bigger bevel on the end of that with a file, and it takes a little bit because stainless is hard. But take your time, put a good bevel on there. And this is 1/4 inch fuel line that we're making for that 3A project. And when you put it in your bar there, you could play around with not keeping it up so high on this little bending plug. So, I mean, not halfway, but you could take it just a whisker down from the top, and you got to play around with that and see how your stainless is flaring. But the stainless kind of scares a lot of guys away, and they get bad bends, and you got to make sure you lock it in your bar real good. You want those teeth to really kind of bite in there. And we're going to start moving on here, and we're going to put a fitting on the end, and then we'll start bending. And bending's just a thing you have to do some to get good at it and figure out where to put the bends and how far to go. And you know, if you're going to do some tube bending for the first time, get a good tube bender. Get a couple extra pieces of just real inexpensive steel brake line, and just play around with it. Take some measurements, put some bends in it, see how much take up there is, and be conscious of the radius of the bender. And with a little bit of practice, you could be turning out lines real nice. So let me show you how we go about doing this stainless one. Okay, there's our stainless steel. We've got a generous bevel on there. I don't know if you can pick that up in the camera. And we're just a hair lower. I think you can see that. Maybe, maybe 30, 40 thousandths lower than the top of our bending plug. Just a whisker lower. And we're going to do the same procedure that we did on that soft steel line on this very hard stainless steel line. Take your time, you know, be patient about it. Lube up your yoke screw. Always keep this screw well lubed. And just go about it. Don't rush it. Just squeeze it down nice and easy. And I'll show you how it comes out. And it should be just like that soft steel line that we did. Okay, there's our first squeeze with our yoke. We've got our plug right up against our bar, and that's the first step on a stainless steel. Not difficult at all. Just like I say, keep your screw well lubricated, and it'll push that down like nothing. So let's take it out of there and see what we wound up with. Okay, there it is. Perfectly formed and pushed down into our bar here. You can see the bevel on there. It will get pushed down into the bevel. Everyone's got the right size bevel on it, and that's a nice formed first stage to our double flare on hard stainless tube. Okay, now let's put the bevel in there with the bending yoke, and it'll be a completed bend. Not bend, flare. I'm getting ahead of myself. Completed flare. We'll bend it right after this. Okay, there is a very nice double flare on the stainless. I hope you can see in there. I think you might be able to see in there the double part of it, but it came out very nice. And we'll put a nut on there, and then we'll start our bending. Okay, here's our bend with a stainless steel nut on it. And I think you can see it's nice and square, it's nice and round. Bevel's perfect. And that's how you make a bend in stainless steel. If you just take your time, I think one of the most important things on the stainless steel is to bevel the tube, which a lot of guys don't do. And that's kind of critical. And when you're using stainless, take the time, find some stainless steel tube fittings like this, and that line will be in your vehicle, you know, basically for the life of the vehicle. They just don't make sense to put a steel fitting on a stainless steel line, and everybody's doing it, and that's why I do 99% of the stuff I do here in restorations I do myself, because I just got so tired of dealing with companies that just shortcut everything, and you know, they're overpriced on what they're selling you to begin with, and you know, it's just satisfying to do your own work. So if you're one of the guys out there that likes to do your own work and you've been shying away from stainless steel, don't. Just get a very good flaring kit, and you won't have any trouble with it. And you'll be able to do it yourself, and you'll be able to source the tubing and the stainless tube nuts much more economically. You could probably do five vehicles of stainless tube if you bend it yourself than if you bought one set from a company. So the cost savings are tremendous, and don't be afraid to flare stainless steel. So I'm going to get on to bending this one right now, and I'll come back and I'll show you the completed line. Okay, here's the finished line, and it's a nice replica of what we had. And one thing to remember before you put your last flare on there is load up the tube with everything you're going to need. And we needed a couple pieces for a clamp to go over here. And always remember to put your nut on before you put your final flare on. It happens to everybody. You'll make a perfect line, put the final flare on, and then you'll forget you would have forgotten to put your nut on there. It happens to everybody. But just try and be conscious of what you're doing. Take your time, think it through, put your bends in the right spot, and you'll come out with a perfect line just like we have here. So, I know it's kind of a long video, but I do get a lot of requests to cover basic things. A lot of guys are just starting out there, and I like to help those guys out too, you know, with the very basic stuff. So, that's all I have for today. And as always, if there's anything you'd like to see, please just send me a comment and I'll try and get it out there for you. But be conscious of your brake and fuel lines, and be safe out there, and take the time and do it right. And I will catch you on the next video. Hopefully I will find somebody to help me turn that flange on the copper tank. Maybe we could get that done this weekend. But otherwise, we'll keep cranking on this CJ3A and try and get it finished up. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.